for today. We're going to be talking about some of the final part of DBT. Now, you've gone through DBT courses, you know what a seed is, you know how to define source, you know how to build your models, you know how to run your models and things like that. So you are comfortable with DBT. But now there are some extra things that is particular to DBT that you also need to be aware of. And one is, okay, how do you move stuff to production? How do I deploy my model? So they've taught us how to run model, but okay. Do I just go to DBT Cloud every day and be running DBT run, DBT build, and things like that? Or okay, how do I schedule my job if I'm not using DBT Cloud? Okay, what do I do? So and things like that. So that is what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be going through how to deploy DBT models and some of the measures that you need to put in place. And we'll talk about some of the not so popular topics, but I have it as advanced topics, but I'm going to call it not so popular topics that you rarely see people talk about them. So, and the first one is hooks. This is an interesting one because you can go about your day using DBT without not having to use hooks. So now to define what hooks are SQL commands that you want to execute at different times. So let's say before a model run, you want to execute a SQL command, or after a model finish running, you want to execute a command, or before your command run, you want to execute a command, or after. So we have four categories of hooks. We have what they call pre-hook, which is executed. So these are SQL statements that is executed before a model, seed, or snapshot is built. So post hook, we this is basically just an inverse of pre hook. So this is executed after a model, seed, or snapshot is built, and we have the other one, which is on run start. So this is like a pre-hook, but a pre-hook runs after just before a model, but a run start runs just before a command. And if you see on the screen, you're going to see some of the example commands that you can a on run start would run before. So on run start now, if you have on run start hook command, anything that you put there is going to run before the build, compile, doc generate, run, sage, snapshot, or dbt test. And the other one, which is like the inverse, which is on run end, is going to execute at the end of the command. So you might be thinking, okay, what is the use case? Like, okay, where will I use this? So I've said that. So before I give the answer, I would like to throw it to the audience and ask, okay, what do you think? Like, do you guys see a scenario where you might need to use one out of these four hooks? Yeah, does anyone wants to give it a shot? Yeah,
I
Tim.
think for
Pre-hook
me,
for granting privilege, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Can you
So
guys hear me?
yeah, to actually follow up
Okay.
on that granting privilege, okay, why do I need to put it on? Why do I use hook? Why do I need to put it? Why do I need to use hook to grant privilege?
So before you start running your models and all, you may not have like some privileges to the database that you want to store your tables and your models. So you will need to enable the pre-hook to like grant you a write privilege, for instance, into that database or into the schema that you're about to run your models into. And then you can, of course, end your revoke privileges after you're done with your models with the post hook or at one end as well, I think.
Sorry, you said that you use the post hook to remove the privilege. I did not get that.
No, no, no. I was just adding VC to it, really. Just the pre-hook was what I was actually saying.
So you use pre hook to give a right privilege. to the user that is running your model. Did I get that right?
Yeah, yeah, that's what I said.
Wouldn't the user that you're using for transformation, wouldn't that be like close to a super user?
Well, yeah, I don't know, maybe.
I mean, you answered the question right. Hooks are used to give um privileges. But now, why do I need to? I mean, I can also just put that. I can also just run that once, and that would be why do I need to use hook? Okay, does anyone also give it an attempt? Okay, okay. So let me answer the question. So let's say I'm a data consumer in Temitayo's company, and he exposed a model for me called um, churned customers or customers that are about to churn. So basically, every day I I go to that table and I filter some things and I call them and I try to get them to like become active again. So, and do we all understand the concept of full refresh?
I do.
Okay. So there are some privileges that when you rebuild something, all those existing privileges get lost. So when you rebuild them again now, you need to reapply your privilege. So that is why you want to put things like that in hooks. Though there are some data platforms that support future looking access. But in case you just want to give someone a particular access to a single table and maybe that table gets rebuilt. So, and you want to make sure that, okay, after that table gets rebuilt, the access are reapplied again. So that is when you will use a post hook to run those commands after the model gets built. So, and for pre-hook also, a sample scenario can be, so let's say you need to like to create um, some temporary tables or there are some gymnastics that needs to be done and all those things. And for pre-hook and post-hook, this SQL statement can be simple or complex. So where for complex,
Good afternoon.
uh,
You
yeah,
have Gary. I think I'm going to pay
uh,
now.
let me
Oh,
mute
Monday.
that person. So the SQL can be simple or complex, and in some scenario where you're going to have some complex query, this would be a macro. So this is just to say that for a pre-hook or a post-hook, you can call a macro from hooks. So yeah, so that is what hooks are, and I'm going to be showing you guys an example of hooks and how to use them in a small demo. So to go to the next one we are going to be talking about flags. So, as from the past 3 weeks that you guys have been doing classes and also practicing on your hand, you would have used one or more flags. So, and what are DBT flags? DBT flags are global configuration that basically gives you the ability to change or tell DBT how to run your project. So, and there are different types of flags. So there are some that you pass to state. There's a state flag. So there's a full refresh flag. There is a defer flag. There is a favor state flag, and all those flags. So, and if you look at the documentation, you can see all these different flags and the action that they do. So then we'll be seeing all this live also in the demo. So to go to the next one is called exposures. And this is something that is not very, very popular as it should be. So one of the beautiful thing about DBT is the documentation aspect, the lineage where you see dependency out of the box. You can see that model A depends on model B, and model B connects to model C, and like that, like that, like that, like that. So, but now, for some people, the the lineage only stops after the transformation. It doesn't include the end use. It doesn't include who and where these final tables is being consumed. So, okay, you have a customer table that fits into a machine learning model, and in your lineage, there's no connection to it. There's no way to tell that, okay, this table is being used in A, is being used in B, it's powering this dashboard, it's powering this machine learning applications, it's powering this, powering that. So that means that the lineage is not complete, and exposure is the missing part. So exposure is just giving us the ability to have an end-to-end lineage. So in DBT, you have source to document your sources. Then if you are using the ref ginger commands, it basically built out the lineage where you're going to say the staging models, the intermediates, the facts, and all those things. But now how it's been consumed in dashboard and data science application, that is not visible. So this is the gap that exposure fill. So when you define exposure, you define um where it is being consumed. You define, okay, this is dashboard, this is the owner, this is the link, and these are the models it depends on. And DBT intelligently just build out the image. And another thing that exposure helps someone to do is that now you can also use it to do selection. So let's say you receive a feedback from a stakeholder that there's a dashboard called, let's say there's a dashboard called, mm, let's say daily transaction or something like that, and the dashboard is stale. But now, what feeds into that dashboard directly or indirectly is like 30 models. So now, how do you like run everything? How do you refresh all the models that fits into that dashboard without exposure in place now? So one, it's even going to be hard to know what exactly is feeding into the dashboard. So even let's say you now know, let's say you go to the BI tool and maybe you edit the workbook and you see, okay, the analyst is pulling this table, the analyst is pulling that table, like that, like that. So now you now need to go back to DBT and take each one and see, okay, is this a node? This is another node. You might have two or three nodes. Then you now run those nodes independently or just run them together. So, but with exposure now, you can just select that dashboard and just run everything before it. So, that is another thing that exposure can help us with. So to go to the next one, which is the set like some other selector methods that are available in DBT. When we are using DBT, the ones that we are familiar with, it's the just the model selector where you do dbt run hyphen select then the model name, and you can either add the plus symbol to say, okay, I want to run everything after this model, I want to run everything before this model, and all those things also take node count. So you can say I want to run um two nodes deep or two nodes ahead. So that is the one that is very, very common. And this slide is to bring to our notice that there are other ways to do selection. Just before this slide, I talked about how you can use exposure to run models. So the first one that I'm going to be talking about is tags. So now, when you create model, and I'm going to be showing you guys live an example of this. When you create model, you can tag model. So, and you can have different tags. You can have tags. One example the tags that you will probably have is what we call PI. So you can tag a model to contain PII. You can tag, okay, this tag. You can even use tag to like create jobs. So let's say there are models that you needs to run on a weekly basis now. So how do you know the model that need to run? Instead of having to like to run those model, you create a job, then start putting those model names and put it in a run command. So you will see an example. Okay, Jonathan, please your question.
Yes, I do. So sorry, my network threw me off. So that's why I didn't ask earlier. When you were treating the hooks, so there's something I used hook for one time. I just want to know if there is a smarter way to do it. So I wanted to create a function. Um, and I couldn't get a way to create a function using DBT, like a function object. So uh, I did a hook. I think I created a macros that that creates that function. So I did a hook to run that macro, like to run. So the macros is something like the create function statements. So that was what I did using the pre-hook. Then the model is just like select one, something like that. It's PostgreSQL. So it's just creating like a view, just that has like sorry, a table that has like just one column and one row. Just but what it just does is to create that function for me. So is there a smarter way to handle that, or
So
that's
what does
like
the function do again? I did not get the part where you said the what does the function what's the purpose
no,
of the
the
function?
function is just the function is I wanted to create like a report, but the report had to so it's kind of an overview report, like a breakdown. But again, in the inner query, like in an inner query, it's supposed to filter for dates, which I won't be able to do if I just deploy the whole thing as a view, because it's an inner query that is responding to the date values. So that's why I created a function to take from the reports, to take the arguments of the dates from the report, that the date from and the date to. So that's why I built like the function. But I wanted to do it with DBT and not doing it directly on my database, on my data warehouse.
Okay, so sorry. So if I should get that right now, so you have a view, and that in that view now you have a date that you need to you need a date value to use to do the filter. Am I right up to that stage?
Yes, you are. So the date value now is in a subquery of that view, not in the outer result. So it's just like there's a date in one of the subqueries, and the outer query itself, the date is not coming out in the outer query, but the date is to be factored in. I don't know how else to
So
but the part that I want to know is there a smarter way to have created a function generally, like creating functions on my data warehouse using DBT? Is there a smarter way
okay,
than using hook?
okay. So to answer your question, I don't think function will be the right way to go. So if you need to like run a query to get a result and use the result in your model, so there are different ways to do that. So there is a concept of called run query. So at the top of your model, you can have you can run a query that's going to get evaluated, and you are going to store that in a variable, and you can use that variable to like in your listing. So but then I will need to see the view to be able to like better explain or better advise on the best way to go. But if you need to create a database object, yes, you can use you should be able to use hook to do that. So you probably have your macro and just call that macro maybe as an or run start or as a pre. So yeah, but then I don't think from what you've explained, I don't think the function is the way to go. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yes, but sorry for dragging you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no. It's all right. It's all right. Any question is welcome. So, like I said, there is a function or method. I don't know what I'm going to call it, called run query, that you can use to run a query get the results, assign it, then DBT will run this before the actual model code runs. Then you can use that um, result as a variable. Maybe you can say, okay, where the date column is greater than or equal to, then you pass in the variable name and DBT will do the evaluation and substitution. Okay, cool.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So I was saying that the common thing that we know that is very, very common that you're going to see is that okay, you can select, you can run models using the model name or using the path. So now I'm now saying that there are other selector methods. So you can use tags. So you can create tags for weekly schedule. Okay, this model now does not need to be refreshing daily. It needs to refresh weekly. So you can have a tag for weekly. You can have a tag for monthly, and you use this tag to create a job. So this is also to bring to our notice that there's a concept called tags. So the less popular one again is configs. So let's say you want to run all the views in your project. How do you do this? So you can pass a config that materialize then view. So this configs now is going to run all the views in the project, and you can use any of the config arguments to call models. So another selector method that is also less popular is called groups. So and this works almost the same as tag, but it is different. You use this to group models, so you can have something like finance group, marketing, and the likes like that. And you can use this. There are different ways that this can be um, there are different ways that this can be used, but in this context, you can use groups to select models to run. And the last one that we're going to be talking about is called state. And this is something that we should know because this can be one of the ways that we save costs while using DBT. So imagine now that in a large project, you created some new models and you need to run only this model. So how do you do it? So, well, you can go the manual way of just creating like maybe a generic job, and every time there's a new model, you will go to that generic job and just pass in the name or just pass in the name of the model that you just created. But then in the states feature. So there's a concept called new and modify that you can use to select, okay, I want to run all the new models. I want to run the models that was recently changed. And you see that difference between just running the new models and modified models and just rebuilding your projects, that the difference in cost can be massive. So this is also to bring to our attention that a concept called state. So you should do dbt run select state new. Dbt will run all the new models that were recently created. Okay, cool. So then after that, the next thing that we're going to talk about is environment management.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry for cutting in. How recent is the recently created? So like a week ago, will it count it as recently created as well? Or it will just run those models that have not been run before?
No. So are you talking about new or modified?
For the new, the this state, the one the DBT run, the one you just finished explaining now. So
This
you said
state?
it to if you run it to yes, you said if we run something like this new, like states new, that it runs like models that are recently created. So I'm not saying like
That are
what
new.
does like okay that new.
Yeah. So
Okay.
and
So
there's a way that DBT knows models that are new and models that are recently modified. So and we are also going to put this to test in some few minutes. So this is also just to bring to your attention that okay, if you want to like you want to run jobs that you, let's say you created a new model and just want to, or five models, and you don't want to run those model independently, or you don't want to like type those model name by name, you can use the concept of state dot colon new, and it's going to run all those models that you just recently created. So and the same thing applies for also modified. So the next thing we're going to be talking about is environment management. And if you're on DBT Cloud, this sort of they've done a lot of this heavy lifting, where in a DBT Cloud you have the development environment created, um, you have the production environment created, and you can have a general environment created. So, and these environments are isolated from each other. So now, how should you structure your environment? Okay, there are different ways people structure the environment now. So all these different environments now can use one database and multiple schemas. So it's not possible to be using one database and one schema. Just know that I mean, technically it's possible to point, but then you just know that okay, your production and development is right into the same place. I mean, that is just chaos. So the different ways that you probably see how that DB2 will be structured is one database and multiple schema, where you're going to have maybe an analytics database, and you're going to have a DBT dev schema or DBT prod schema and things like that. So the second one is one database per environment. So now you're going to have like analytics, and you're going to have analytics underscore dev or analytics underscore QA, like that. Then the third approach or way that you can structure your project is one database per developer. So that means that if everybody on this call is working for the same company, we are going to have our own separate database. So you're going to have a Joseph database where everything that Joseph is doing will be written there, like that, like that, like that. So that is the different options of structuring your environment when using DBT. Okay, but if I'm to choose one, I'm going to go with one database per environment. And in the dev environment, each user would have their own schema. So in the analytics dev, you are going to have a schema where um, Joseph is writing to, um, Timothy is writing to, and things like that. So you just need to find a structure that works best for you. So to go to the next one, and this is actually very, very important, and it is not that common. So observability. So who wants to like tell us what observability means to them? Who wants to give it a try? What is about observability, and as a data person, where have they used this? Okay, yeah, Ebenezer.
All right, please confirm if you can hear me.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So for my own understanding, I think observability is you trying to make sense of the byproducts of whatever operations you carry out in DBT. So byproducts can include logs, you can include artifacts. Ability is you try to learn from those things just to see how you can improve the processes. I mean, that's just my understanding.
Okay, thank you. So, thank you for that. To simply put it, observability is when you have systems in place to basically give you insights into what is happening in your system or infrastructure. So I'm running dbt commands. Okay, what is happening there? Like what are the jobs that were ran? How long did it take? How much data did it scan? How many rows was written? All these things. Out of the box, this data is available, but then out of the box, you can't easily tell what exactly is going on in your DBT project. So, and this is something that should be in place for any DBT project because now you can, when a model, so let me give an example now. So let's say you started now and you were running a model and that model is taking just maybe 5 seconds. Then when you build the model, it was taking 5 seconds. 1 year down the line, that 5 seconds now has increased to 20 minutes. Now, without this in place now, it's going to be hard to know to identify that okay, this model that was taking 5 seconds is now taking 20 minutes. Unless you have to manually now start going through logs to see okay, what exactly is taking time with my job. So with proper observability in place now, you can see when models degrade. You can see when there are duplicate runs. You can see models that needs to be optimized. Okay, um, this model started out scanning 10 MB. It's now scanning 20 gig. It's scanning 50 gig like that. So without that in place now, it's going to be hard to know what exactly is going on in your system, what is being scanned and things like that. So when you have this in place now, you can see, oh, um, these are the models that are causing issues with my job. These are the models that are making my job take long. So these are the models that are contributing to my data platform costs. I need to optimize them. So, okay, maybe you started out with a full refresh. Now you need to find a way to make them incremental. So, how do you identify models that need to be made incremental? Because sometimes incremental models can be very, very complex to implement. So, if the cost of going incremental and the cost of is more expensive than doesn't make sense than full refresh, then so let's say, for example, now you are doing a full refresh on the product table and the old product table is just 10. I mean, it doesn't really make sense to make that incremental because trying to like do the whole incremental, it just doesn't worth it. So how do you identify models that need to be moved to incremental model? These are the things, these are some of the things that when you have things in place, like for observability, you will be able to easily find out. So, and there are different ways that people set up observability for DPT projects. So you can go through the custom route or you can use packages and tools. And a popular tool out there that people use for observability for DBT is called Elementary. So when you install this package in DBT, it's just like your Python libraries out of the box and you complete the configuration out of the box is going to like collect some things and put in your data platform for you to analyze. So now let's say today now you've heard the gospel of observability in DBT from Joseph and you're looking, okay, how do I set it? How do I set this up in DBT? What do I need to do? So before you can start, you need to first identify what you want to collect, what you want to track. So after identifying those things, then you create a table where they will be stored. Then after you create a table where they will be stored, now you will implement macros and all the other gymnastics that you need to do to get these data points from where they reside and insert them into the table. So I'm going to be walking you through a custom implementation for this, and we're going to be seeing the example in the data platform. So now to go to the next concept, which is okay. What are the different Git workflows that are there in DBT? So, and I'm going to be talking about two different workflows. The first one is something that if you are using either DBT Core or DBT Cloud, you are probably already using, which is okay, you have a main branch or you have a master branch and you created a branch of it called customer segmentation and you develop some models, you raise the PR, it was reviewed, it was matched, like that. That is basically direct promotion. So direct promotion is when only one branch is long-lived. So the ideal thing would be that when branches are created and they are matched, they get deleted. In an ideal environment, you won't see branch with hundreds, you won't see 200 branches, you won't see 300 branches. Branch should not be long-lived. So in a direct promotion workflow, you just have a single branch that is long-lived, either main or master. It can be anything. You can decide to call it anything you want. So and it's from that branch that everybody would like create their own branch, develop what they want to develop, then it is reviewed, then it is matched. That is basically direct promotion. Now, if you're on DBT Cloud, okay, how does direct promotion works now? So it's the same process, but now there's an extra thing called CI, which is continuous integration. So someone create a branch of the main on master, they develop their branch, they raise the pull request. Now, before that pull request gets reviewed, first you want to make sure that okay, um, this person is the code still valid, or is there like a error that might be that might not be easy to like spot? So this is what CI would help you to do, and this is another way. And one thing you should not do in a continuous integration when you are like testing your models to be sure that they run is that you don't want to like build all your models. So you only want to build the models that the person created. So now to now ask you guys a question now. So now I raised a PR for a feature called customer segmentation, and I modified five I created five um new models now. And what would be the right way to like run those models? Do I just do dbt build or dbt run and allow dbt to just run all your projects? So like, what would be the ideal way to select those things?
Joseph, could you please retrace the question?
So in some slides, sorry, few slides, I talked about the different selectors, the other selectors that are available in DBT, and where I mentioned things like tags, configs, and the likes like that. And I say that now I'm talking about that. I'm talking about Git workflow strategy, and I said that people create branches of the main, and you raise a pull request, and before the pull request even get reviewed, they want to make sure that there is no beans in the pull request. Okay. This model actually it's executing, it runs completely, not that you raise the model and the PR get matched, and when the model now run in production, you see that okay, this model is failing, this model is breaking, there's an error somewhere. So I'm not saying now that is what CI would actually catch. I'm now saying that in that CI, what will be the command that I need to run for that continuous integration to make sure that the new models or modified models are executing, they can be built successfully.
Okay, I think you use the state tag selector dbt run dash select state colon new.
Okay. Yeah, so that is correct. So you will have the CI that runs that. Then if that is successful, then it gets reviewed to be sure that the logic is correct and like that. Then before it gets matched. Now we've talked about CI. Now there's another aspect to it, which is CD. Now when you match that, when the code gets matched now, and you need to like, okay, okay, how do you make sure that the code that gets matched now is deployed? Because now after merge now, that doesn't mean that the change now is not in production. Now the model still needs to be built in production. So this is where you would have your CD job, and if you're on DBT Cloud, there is a merge job that gets executed when things are merged to the long-lived branch. So that is that for direct promotion. The other workflow that is available, that's also available, is called indirect promotion. And in this case, there are two long-lived branch where you are going to have the main on master, and you're going to have another one, which is probably maybe a QA or UAT, where that was going to be built on the main, and it's from that QA or UAT that everybody will be building from and be merging into before it is matched to main. So that is the indirect promotion. But what you're probably going to find in most places is this direct promotion. So I don't know, does anybody have any question before we go into a small demo? Okay. I'm going to take that as you guys don't have question. Please, can you confirm that you can see my DBT cloud? Okay,
Yes.
great. So one other thing that I need to talk about is the concept of packages. So now, packages in DBT are extensions that people have built. So let's say, um, because there's no way that DBT out of the box would come with everything that everyone would need for the use case. People have different use cases, and there's no way that a corporation would account for everything. They can account for most things that people will that's common across organizations, but then there are some things that are specific to just a handful of organizations. So some people take it upon themselves to develop what we call packages that for people to reuse. So if you're familiar with Python now, you'll see things like maybe pandas that people build. I mean, that does not come with this thing, or maybe SQL Alchemy and things like that. That some people have gone through the trouble to build so that people can reuse and they won't have to reinvent the wheel. And there are different packages that are very, very popular out there in DBT. So you have your DBT expectations, DBT utils, but the one that I love the most is called CodeGen. So, and CodeGen helps with some of the repetitive stuff that is common with DBT. And you might ask yourself, okay, what are the repetitive stuffs in DBT now? You know, source, imagine now that you have a data platform and an Airflow job has loaded like 100 tables, and you need to define these 100 tables as source. Now, you need to create your source file in DBT and start typing and start writing those tables one by one. I mean, that is a manual work, and as an engineer, you shouldn't have to be doing that. So somebody took it upon themselves to create CodeGen, and you can create a source template from the data that is in your data platform. It's going to generate a sample code for your source, but it's not going to fill in the description. You're just going to create the source, the table names like that, and you can go ahead to fill in the description, and you can even go ahead to extend it to say, okay, you need to also list the columns. So now, how do you add packages to DBT? So you go to your packages.yaml and you add the package. Yeah. So this is the code gen package here. It has already been added there. So you add the name and you add the version. Then after you do that, you will run your dbt dept command to do the installation. And if you are curious to know about the different packages that are available, you can go to this page to see the different packages that's available. Now you can see these are the feature packages that are very, very popular in DBT, and you can scroll down to see all the packages that people have created. So you can see these are the ones that DBT Labs by themselves created. These are the packages that DLT, a popular ELT tool. So this is also a package for elementary. And when you click on them, you will be able to see how to use them. So for CodeGen now, you can see, okay, if you want to install it, add this to your packages and you run DBT devs to install the package. And if you scroll down, you can see some of the things that CodeGen can help you do. So you can use CodeGen to generate source. You can use CodeGen to generate base model. You can use CodeGen to create base model and things like that. You can even use CodeGen to create your model.yaml. So these are repetitive tasks that can be very, very boring to do, and CodeGen helps automate it. So and this is an example here. So you run this DBT run operation, generate source, you pass the schema name, you tell it, okay, do you want to add columns to it? Do you want to add the data type? And you can see it's going to give you like a code that you can copy into your source.yaml. So without this now, you will need to type this by hand, and imagine that you have hundreds of tables to do that. That is boring work, and that is very, very time consuming. So these are things that CodeGen helps you to do. You can see this is like your staging models, your base model. Then from there, you can now start doing your light transformation as renaming or changing its case and things like that. So I'm going to drop the link to the package that so that you guys can go and see the different packages that are available. So one second, I'm trying to, oh, my screen sharing is paused. I'm trying to open the chat to drop the link. I'm just saying, okay, you probably were answering to some of the questions that I was asking. So for the DBT packages now, it's still installing, and now it has finished installing. Can see it installed this, that, like that. So that is for DBT package. Now to the next one, just give me some second to look at my notes. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is, okay, how do we add exposures? So you can add exposure with the same way with source using the exposure tag. So one second, let me just see where I created this exposure. Just 1 second, please. Yeah, sorry, 1 second. So let's give this something to load. I want to confirm that the exposure is on this branch. Okay, so it's not here, so let me just create one. So you can see customer segmentation type dashboard. Then depends on, I think it's like this. So it depends on theme, customers, and see is theme or no. And so let's give this some minute to pass. Okay, so let me go back to dim customers and so 1 second, let me grab the command for exposures. You seen this? Okay, so let me go back to dim custom. I think it's the name. Okay, you can see now I have the exposure here. Can you all see the exposure that is now showing the lineage? Hello, everyone. Okay, cool. So that is how you create an exposure. So, and you can have as many exposure as possible. And you can see you can use this to do the also node selection. So to go to the next one, no, to talk about the observability part, how do you implement that in DBT? But just before I go into that now, let me walk through some of the tags now to show you, okay, how do you add tags in DBT? So I have an example here now where I created that called dim. Now you can create tags called PII, and also this is a sample group. But with the groups, you can just go ahead and start use creating groups just like tags. So first of all, you need to have a groups.yaml, then you define the group name before you can start using groups in your model. And you can also, let me just copy some of the commands that I have in my, what's it called? I run. So let's say dbt run sample group things like this. Creating of group. So let me run this command again. You can see now it's now running dim customers. So I can have as many models, I can tag as many models in a single group. So that is also just to show you the different types of selector that is available. But one thing that you guys will notice is now in this space is that now I'm having a limit of 1 row. So how did I achieve this? So in when you are developing, especially with large tables, you would want to a popular, or how would I say this? One thing that you might see in some places is that they limit data in there. So if my data is, I say, hundreds of million rows in production, I don't need to replicate that in my dev. I don't need to like to be duplicating data in my dev. So anytime I'm materializing data in dev, I am limiting the row. So how do I do this in a way that is scalable? So the first thing will be to create what we call an environmental variable. So in your DBT, if you go to your orchestration, you can see the different environments that are here. So in this MacDBT Cloud now, I have a dev environment, I have a production environment, and I have a staging environment. And if you should see this, you see that there's an environmental variable tab here. And in this place, I've created an environmental variable called dbt row limit. And I only passed a value for development. So let's say I want to also pass it for QA, I would also give it a value. And in my studio, I can now say that, okay, if the environmental stuff and pass it to false. So that means that if this environmental variable exists, include this code in the model. So this is going to evaluate to be one, and in production, this will be four. So it's not going to limit it in production. All right. So that is that to talk about environmental variable and limiting data in depth. So the next thing that I'm going to talk about is, okay, how do you implement observability? So the first thing first will be that, okay, you need to create your table. First, you've identified the metadata that you want to collect. So in this place now, one second. Just one second. I'm missing a comment. Okay, so the first thing will be to create your table. So in this space now, I'm creating a table called dbt results.yaml. dbt results.sql. And when I have this code now and I run it now, this is going to create a table in dbt that's going to have the result ID, the invocation ID, the unique ID, the database name, schema name, and all these other stuff. One second. Mm. Let me just use the space to explain. So I created the schema for the table to run here, and I'm having one equal to zero so that DBT does not rebuild or insert dirty data into my table. And I'm making this incremental so that it doesn't delete the table and try to recreate it. So after doing this now, have the table structure in my data platform. Now I need to like write the macros to pass the objects and also to insert it. So the first macro that I'm going to write is the pass dbt result. So this is the um, macro that is going to read some of the active facts. And after reading the active facts, it's going to pass all these metadata that I want to collect. So after this macro has passed this metadata, then I have another macro to like insert it into the table. So now I've created the system to do this now. So how do I make sure that, okay, after every time that a project runs, I need to like run this to get the metadata and also insert it into the DB. So I do that using the hook. which is what we called pre on operation end, or what's it called again? So in my project.yaml now, you are going to see that, yeah, I have on run end. So on every run now, it's going to like insert the metadata into the data platform. And if I should go to this place and go to my dev, you can see dbt result. Let me refresh this. Second, this is now where it's writing to. Yeah, for some reason, this is not writing, but this is an example of some of the commands that I've run. You can see the result ID, invocation ID, unique database, and in this space, now you can see the execution time and the rows affected. So in this case now, when you have this process in place over time and you do some analysis on it, you can see the kind of models that are degraded with time, and from there you will know what to do next. So this is an example implementation of observability. I mean, that is just getting the data into the system. You still need to build something on top of this data. So now to walk you through the CI part, then we'll talk about one last thing. So in your environment, you would have an environment like this. You would have the dev, you would have the prod, and you have the QA environment. So now to create a CI, you will go to your jobs. Then, so in this place now, I have the job that runs everything. This ideally you should not be building all your projects because with time it's going to be taking long and it's very, very expensive. In some situations, people will disable you from building all your project because you will just lock resource. So the first phase is CI. You want to make sure that, okay, does the code work? So you create a job called CI to like run the state, modify. So and how do you do this? You go to your orchestration, you go to jobs, you go to create jobs. And if you're on dbt cloud, you see three different options. You see the deploy job, you see the continuous integration job, you see the match job. So this one is the CI job and this one is the CD job. So when you go to continuous integration, you are going to see a screen like this. So yeah, I'm saying, okay, beans check. I want to check that, okay, the PR does not create error. It runs fine. And you can see the tag here is modified plus. So this is going to build all the models that are modified or created. Then after that, if it's successful, you are going to see something like this. You can see one check passed. Can say it's here. So ideally now you would want to make this to be blocking. So by blocking, I mean that if the CI test, if it's still running or it did not pass, the PR should not even go to the next stage. So you want to make sure that this step is a blocking step. So that is that for the CI part, and the CD part is also very, very similar. You go to the you go to the jobs, then you go to create job, then you could go to merge. You are going to see a very, very similar screen, but then now this is going to be running the production. This is going to be running the models in production. So at the end of the day, you're going to be having something like this. This one is going to be scheduled to run maybe daily or weekly. You have this to run every time a PR is raised, and you have this to run every time it changes man, so that when it changes match, you don't need to go to the dbt cloud to also now start running dbt commands. So that is that on that. Before I call it a day and start taking question, I said that in some places they are going to disable building audio projects. So let me see, do I have this? It's not here. So in this place, I have a query to basically just do check sanity. So what does this do? So this is going to avoid if anybody tries to like run a if anybody tries to like try to build all the models, is going to fail. So I'm basically just checking, okay, are you selecting a model? If you're not selecting a model, it's going to fail. It's not even going to allow you because if you are in a large project, you want to put measures in place that somebody just don't randomly just build out your project because that is going to be very, very expensive. So another thing that I also want to call out again before we call it a day. I did not, for some reason, this comment has gotten lost. So there is a flag called flag dot which. So you can use this flag to get insight into which command is running. Are they running are they running okay, this is it here. Okay. Which command is the person running? So for the first person that said, okay, I want to run a query to get something, you can see this is what I was talking about. So in this case now, it's going to run this query, then store it as a result, and I am able to use this variable in the model. So this is what I was saying that okay, this is the way that I'm going to explore first. So and let's say you want to like change the behavior or you need to know, okay, are they running this model? Are they compiling this model? Are they building this model? Because you might have some macro that you are calling in the model, and you don't want that macro to be running every time the stuff is compiling. So if you should compile a model that has a macro outside, the macro will get called. So and that was an expressive lesson for me to learn that I had a macro that was like destructive. So every time that model gets compiled, the macro gets run and data gets deleted. So it was not obvious that, okay, this is deleting data. So in this case now you want, okay, are they running the model? If they are running the model, now you can now go ahead to delete the data. That is also just to also call this out. So that would be the end of this presentation. And I'm going to give some minutes for us to ask questions, then we'll call it a day. Cool. Does anybody have any question?
Yeah. Thank you very much for that session. I think was the shortest class we've had, like in the four classes, but it was interesting and engaging with your convoys too. And so, as you showed us something at the beginning, um, that's when you were telling us about hooks. Sorry, before the hooks, the on run starts, on run end, or so the on run starts, you said like it gets executed before dbt run, dbt compile, dbt build. So if I say maybe I'm working on like a local environment and I do an on run start or like anytime I want to run something, just do dbt depths or something like that, or like could be anything, or what the instance that someone gives to does the DBT run that we run the on run stats, does it have to be DBT run of all the model? Or once if I run any model whatsoever, it will run that it should pass the command down run stats first. I don't know if my question is clear.
I think I get your question. So as long as you are running any command that run, build, compile, all those things, your anything that you are calling on the on run start, it's going to run. Even if you are running a single model, on run start is going to run. If you are running all the model in your project, on run start is going to run. So that is basically run before the start of the execution of a command.
Okay, thank you. That answers it.
Okay, great. Any other question? So I know that I shared a lot, and you guys will be able to see the codes and play around it. Um, so just to recap some of the things I said. So one, the major takeaway is one, in large projects, you might find that they are going to disable you from building audio projects. And the reason because of it can be resource intensive and it's just going to lock something and it's even going to cost a lot. Just imagine down that okay, your all your data, all your transformation is in terabytes and most of your models are incremental and somebody is just maybe doing a full refresh. You can even disable full refresh. So this is also just to bring to your attention that okay, you can actually change the way GPT behaves to something. Okay, I don't want people to run full refreshing on a table because this table is terabytes. I don't want people to build audio projects. I want to change the behavior and all those things. So that is one major takeaway. The second major takeaway is in terms of monitoring observability. So when people build model, some model might not be inefficient at the beginning, but then as time goes on, it's going to become inefficient. So, but now, how do you know this? And another thing that observability would come into play now. I mentioned that we have different tags. We can run models using the folder name. We can now use tags and all those things now. And when we have this thing that is a lot, there is high tendency that some of the models will be running multiple times a day. Because for example now, a model might be under maths, can also be under finance tag, can also and there's a job to run finance, there's also a job to run that maths folder. So that means that that model now is getting built two times a day. But now it's not very obvious to know that okay, this model has a duplicate run. But when you have observability in place now, you're logging every model that gets built now. So if you should do like maybe a count of models run per day, and you see a model that should be like once a day, you see it is running five times a day, you should know that okay, what is causing the duplicate run? Okay, is it that there's a job to run this tag and this job is also getting executed with this selector and like that? So from there now you can say, okay, maybe you would remove it, maybe you would exclude it from this tag or something. So these are the things that having proper observability would actually do for you. And this is something that I've used personally. And if you want to like use a package, you can use elementary because it's going to get to a point where your finance team will say that okay, your data platform is costing a lot of money. Why are you guys spending thousands of dollars on data platform? So and these are some of the uh, waste that is happening within the transformation that can be cleaned up. So let's say maybe a table has grown from megabytes to like gigabytes and it's still on full refresh. But then you would know. Or maybe you thought that okay, a model is incremental. There are even different incremental strategies, but you've created the incremental model, but then it's still scanning a lot of data. Why is it scanning a lot of data? Is it that the source is not partitioned or something like that? So these are some of the questions that you are going to get when you have this in place. Okay, you have this model. This model is scanning 300 gigabytes on every run. Why is it scanning 300 gigabytes on every run? Okay, is it full refresh? Is it incremental? Okay. There's a concept called what was the name? You know how we have how we can pull data incrementally from the source. We're going to say select star from where updated or created at is greater than or something like that. Then there's a way to offset using partitions. So when you want to offset now, and you know that for every change, the maximum duration that's a record can get updated is 3 months. So there is no, doesn't make sense to be scanning audio partition in a destination folder. So there's a flag that goes on. Let me just look up the name of the flag. I think it's called predicates. 1 second. 1 second. This thing is hanging. But then that's just by the side. So this you would be having questions when you have this observability in place. And I've talked about DBT observability, but then another thing you should also have is observability of your data platform cost. So because if you don't have insight into what is happening, you won't know when things are going wrong. So you were spending $2,000 on BigQuery last month, and all of a sudden this month you are spending $5,000. What happened? So without observability in place now, you can't tell, you wouldn't even know where to check. Well, when you have all these things in place now, you'll be able to say, okay, what exactly changed between last month and this month? You'll be able to narrow down to a specific place and be able to act fast. But without this in place now, you won't be able to do anything. So that is one call out. Another call out is also exposure. It's not something that is very, very popular, but then it is it helps when your models are linked to external, when you can tell where your models are being linked to. So just imagine now that okay, you want to disable a model, or you want to make a change, or you want to retire a model, or the model fails. But then you don't know where this is being used. But with the right exposure now, you can easily tell who and who is going to be impacted. Okay, customer segmentation dashboard will be still this learning model that is feeding into this, something's going to happen to it and things like that. But without exposure in place, you can't fully tell where something is using. So exposure helps you complete your lineage. Yeah. And that brings me to the end of the tech talk. I don't know if anybody have any other question.
I think one more question for me.
Yeah.
Um, I'm currently currently where I work. We started using DBT recently, but we don't use cloud. We use on-prem. So basically, we use DBT core. So I just want to pick your view on um how to how different is how different are things working with cloud and working on-prem. So the difference that I mean now is I think there is one settings on DBT that I've not touched like so far, but I used to sit and like observe it. That's the target dev. I know the dev is most likely development and there will be production. But since we are using core, so is there like a best practice on how to run production in an on-prem environment so that you might want to share?
Okay. So um I would have said that there is no major difference between DBT Core and Cloud. So now, you know that there's a new engine now that is called Fusion. So, but to not go into that, Cloud and self-hosted, let me use that term. The difference is just um, how much you have to do. So with Cloud now, the only thing that you are in charge of is code. But In self-hosted, you are in charge of everything, including in code. So, an example that let me use the concept of cloud service model to explain is where um, it's generally with managed service and self-hosted now. The infrastructure, everything is being managed by DBT Labs. You only just write code. But in the self-hosted now, you need to undo environments. You need to undo the infrastructure that DBT will run on. You need to undo updates. You need to undo all those things. Now on DBT Cloud now, there's a concept of versionless where things just get updated for you. You don't need to like update. You don't need to move your core from version 1.3 to 1.5 and things like that. So it's just that in DBT core, you just have more to do. That's just it. And with how to do things, there isn't really much difference except okay, now you need to figure out okay, how do you want to handle environments? Okay, we talked about managing environment. Do you want to have one database, multiple schema, one database per environment, one developer by database, and things like that. So all those setup are actually very, very easy to do in dbt Cloud, and also external integration and connection. So for example, now if we want to do CI outside of DBT Cloud, when I was going through the example, it was just like button. I was just clicking and I have a CI job already. But outside DBT Cloud, I'll probably need to use something like GitHub Actions to run my CI job, then use GitHub Actions to run the CD job and things like that. So the difference is just responsibility. You're not having a lot to do. That's just the difference. And you mentioned something called target. Target, you use it to override DBT. Okay, where should this be executed? Okay, do you want to run target prod? Do you want to run which environment should it use to run the job? So there isn't really much stuff. There isn't really much. It's just now you're having a lot to do. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Yes, you have. Thank you.
Okay. And another thing that is in DBT Cloud, documentation is out of the box, but then if you're outside DBT Cloud, you will need to find, okay, how do you want to host your documentation? That is another thing that is not readily available. So if you want to host your documentation, you need to like take some extra steps to host your documentation in DBT Core. And again, there are some features that are available on DBT Cloud. So I think they have a DBT Copilot, and in DBT, the enterprise plan, they have something called auto exposures. But I've not checked of recent, but the integration that they worked with is with Tableau. So if you are consuming data, if you are consuming DBT models in Tableau, automatically it is going to create the exposure for you. There's an integration between DBT and Tableau for this auto exposure, but this is only available in the enterprise. It's not available in the $100 per month plan, but the other one it is available there. Okay, cool. Any other question? And in the absence of no question, we are again, before I call it a day, you can ask any question, even if it's about previous classes or how to do some things in DBT, anything like that. Okay, cool. In the absence of no question, welcome to my tech talk to some other time. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.